When the Holy Spirit begins to lead a life, the very first evidence of his presence is always in the heart. It is not in the outward show, not in the spectacular manifestations, not even in the miracles, but in that quiet and powerful transformation that takes place deep within. A heart that was once restless begins to find peace. A heart that was once full of its own desires begins to long for the things of God. You cannot explain it in human terms, because it is not the product of discipline or willpower. It is the gentle yet irresistible work of the Spirit. There comes a moment when you realize you are not the same person you once were. The appetites you had for things that only led to emptiness begin to fade. The chains that once held you so tightly start to break, not because you fought hard enough, but because a greater power now dwells inside. That is what happens when the Spirit moves in the heart, becomes his dwelling place. He doesn't just visit, he makes his home there, and once he has taken residence, everything begins to change. You begin to notice it in the smallest ways. The words you speak are softer, kinder, more filled with love. Where you once reacted in anger, now you pause. Where you once chased after recognition, now you desire only his approval. The transformation is not forced. It flows naturally, like a river whose course has been redirected by the hand of God. You may not even be aware of how much has shifted until someone else looks at you and says, "There is something different about you." And all you can do is smile, because you know it is not you, it is him. That is the miracle of the Spirit. Led life, it begins in the unseen. We live in a world that praises the visible, the accomplishments, the applause, the outward show. But God works from the inside out. He touches the heart, he reshapes the desires, he places his own love where bitterness used to be, his own purity where corruption once ruled, his own strength where weakness once defeated you. Suddenly, you are drawn to his presence, drawn to his word, drawn to his holiness, not because you are told to, but because something within you cries out for it. And oh, the sweetness of that hunger! You see, when the Spirit leads your life, your appetite for the world diminishes, and your appetite for him grows. The things that once fascinated you now seem so small, so empty, compared to the joy of his nearness. You discover that sin loses its attraction, not because temptation disappears, but because his love becomes greater. You fall in love with him in such a way that nothing else can satisfy. The transformation of the heart is not about losing something, but about gaining some, one gaining his presence in a way that makes all else pale in comparison. But with that transformation also comes brokenness. The Spirit gently reveals the hidden places of the heart, the pride, the unforgiveness, the secret wounds, and he doesn't do it to condemn, but to heal. He breaks you in order to remake you. He humbles you in order to lift you. He shows you how much you need him, not to leave you in despair, but to fill you with his life. This is why many resist surrendering fully, because it means yielding everything. But oh, the beauty of letting go. When you finally allow him to strip away the false strength you have clung to, you discover his strength is more than enough. The Spirit is gentle, but he is also thorough. He doesn't leave one corner of the heart untouched. He desires the whole of you, and when you yield, you find freedom like you have never known. You discover that true transformation is not about trying harder, but about trusting deeper. It is not about polishing the outside, but about allowing him to breathe new life within. You cannot boast in it, because you know you did not produce it. All glory belongs to him, and this transformation is not only for you. When the Spirit changes your heart, those around you feel it. A life once filled with strife now carries peace, and others are drawn to it. A tongue once quick to criticize now speaks encouragement, and people take notice. A spirit once weighed down with fear now radiates faith, and suddenly those who encounter you sense something beyond you. They sense him. That is the testimony of a life led by the Spirit, not that you are better, but that Christ is seen in you. This is why the transformation of the heart is the greatest miracle of all. Signs and wonders may draw attention for a moment, but a life that has been changed from the inside out gives lasting evidence of his power. It cannot be denied. It cannot be explained away. It is the living proof that God is real and that his Spirit is alive. So often people search for external proof of God's presence. They long for a visible sign, a dramatic encounter. But if you truly want to know what happens when the Spirit leads your life, look within. Look at the heart that once was cold, now burning with love. Look at the soul that once was restless, now anchored in peace. Look at the one who once walked in darkness, now shining with his light. That is the work of the Spirit, the miracle of his leading. And I tell you this, the world cannot manufacture it, the flesh cannot imitate it, and the enemy cannot counterfeit it. Only the Holy Spirit can take a heart of stone and make it a heart of flesh. Only he can take what was broken and make it whole. Only he can take what was empty and fill it with rivers of living water. This is what truly happens when he leads your life, the transformation of the heart. It is the beginning of everything else. It is the foundation for his guidance, for his power, for his presence. Without it, all else is shallow. With it, everything is possible. When the Holy Spirit begins to lead your life, the transformation of the heart is only the beginning. Once he has taken his place within, he does not remain silent. He begins to guide, to direct, to whisper in ways that are unmistakable to the one who has yielded. And though his voice is gentle, it carries an authority that cannot be ignored. It is not the loud clamor of human reasoning. It is not the anxious rushing of our own thoughts. His leading comes with peace, even when he asks you to step into the unknown. You see, the Spirit's guidance is not limited to great decisions alone. He cares for every detail of your life. He is not a distant observer who intervenes only when there is crisis. No, he is a constant companion, speaking in the quietness of your soul, directing you in ways that often seem so simple, yet prove to be the very hand of God at work. A thought that rises unbidden, a nudge that will not go away, a restlessness when you are about to step outside of his will. All of these are ways he leads, and as you learn to recognize his voice, you find that he is faithful to make his will clear. Many people wonder how to hear him. They expect thunder from heaven or visions in the night. But more often than not, his guidance is like a whisper. It is subtle, yet it carries weight. It comes with a sense of assurance that cannot be shaken. When it is him, there is a knowing deep inside, a peace that lingers even if the path ahead is uncertain. He leads not by confusion, but by clarity. He never manipulates, never pressures, never drives in haste. He leads as a shepherd leads his sheep, with patience, with care, with love. And when you follow that voice, something remarkable happens. Life, which once seemed filled with endless choices and confusion, begins to unfold in divine order. You may not see the entire picture, but step by step he directs your path. Sometimes it means waiting when you would rather run. Sometimes it means stepping out in faith when everything within you wants to stay safe. But in each act of obedience, you discover that he knows better than you. What seemed like a detour becomes the exact path to blessing. What felt like loss becomes the door to gain. What looked impossible becomes a testimony of his faithfulness. There is such beauty in trusting his direction. To the natural mind it may look foolish, to those around you it may seem you are making no sense, but when the Spirit leads, his wisdom surpasses human understanding. He knows the end from the beginning. He sees the dangers you cannot see, the opportunities you might miss, the timing that is perfect. When you allow him to take control, you stop striving to figure everything out and begin to rest in his leading. Do not misunderstand. His leading does not mean there will be no trials. On the contrary, sometimes he leads directly into the storm. But when he does, he also gives the assurance that he is with you in it. And that assurance is enough. Think of it, to face the fiercest winds and yet feel an unshakable peace. because you know you are exactly where He wants you to be. That is the power of His guidance. The world may not understand it, but the one who walks with the Spirit knows that even the storm becomes the place of revelation, the place where His presence is most real. The more you walk with Him, the more sensitive you become to His prompting. You begin to realize that nothing is too small for His concern. A conversation, a meeting, even the words you choose. He is there guiding if only you will listen, and in listening you begin to live differently. You no longer rush ahead in your own strength, nor do you live paralyzed by fear of making mistakes. You live in surrender, and in that surrender there is freedom. What happens when the Spirit leads is this: life begins to align with the will of God. You may not understand every turn, but you trust the one who leads, and as you trust, you see His fingerprints everywhere. Doors open that you could never have forced. Connections are made that you could never have planned. Paths clear that you could never have imagined. It is not coincidence. It is the orchestration of a loving God through His Spirit. But the guidance of the Spirit is not only for your benefit. When you are led by Him, others around you are blessed. Your obedience creates ripples you may never fully see. A word spoken in the right moment, a step taken in faith, an act of kindness prompted by His whisper. These may seem small to you, but to someone else they may be life-changing. That is why it is so vital to yield to His leading, for it is not only your life that He directs, but also the lives He touches through you. And here is something marvelous. The more you yield to His guidance, the more confident you become in His voice. Doubt gives way to assurance, hesitation gives way to boldness. You learn to recognize the difference between your own thoughts and His whisper, between fear and faith, between impulse and divine direction. It is like learning the voice of a loved one. At first you may question, but over time it becomes unmistakable. Oh, how beautiful it is to walk in step with Him, to wake each day not with the burden of figuring everything out, but with the joy of saying, "Holy Spirit, lead me." To face challenges not with anxiety, but with confidence, knowing He will direct every step. To move forward not in fear of missing His will, but in trust that as long as your heart is yielded, He will keep you on the right path. That is the life He desires for you, not a life of confusion, but a life of clarity, not a life of wandering, but a life of purpose. This is what truly happens when the Spirit leads your life. He becomes your guide, your counselor, your compass. And though the journey may not always be easy, it will always be sure, because it is directed by the hand of God Himself. When the Holy Spirit leads your life, the change does not remain hidden within you alone. What He does in the heart, and what He does in guiding your steps, eventually overflows in ways that cannot be contained. The Spirit is not only the transformer of your inner being, He is also the power that enables you to live beyond your own strength. Suddenly, your life becomes more than you ever thought it could be, because it is no longer limited to human ability. It becomes a channel for God Himself to work through. There is a divine power that begins to rest upon you, and it is not for show. It is not to exalt you. It is so that Christ may be revealed. When the Spirit leads, you find yourself walking in a strength that does not come from you. Words come out that pierce hearts, though you never rehearsed them. Prayers bring answers you could never have imagined. Acts of obedience produce results far greater than your effort. You begin to realize that it is not you doing the work. It is Him living His life through you. This is why Jesus said it is better that He go away, so that the Spirit might come. For when the Spirit comes, He does not just walk beside you, He works within you, and the evidence of that work is power. Not the power the world craves, not the power to control or dominate, but the power to love when love seems impossible, the power to forgive when wounds cut deep, the power to stand firm when storms rage, the power to shine light in the darkest places. That is the Spirit's overflow, but His power also manifests in ways that cannot be explained by natural reasoning. Miracles happen, situations shift, Doors open where there were only walls. People are healed, not by your hand, but by his presence flowing through you. Lives are touched in ways you could never orchestrate. The Spirit does not come to make you ordinary. He comes to make the supernatural natural in your life. And when you are yielded, you become the vessel through which he pours out his power to a world that desperately needs him. This overflow is not something you can manufacture. It is not about trying harder to produce results. It comes naturally from intimacy. When the Spirit has transformed your heart and has guided your steps, the power is the fruit of that surrender. You don't need to force it. It flows. Just as a branch connected to the vine bears fruit without striving, so too does the Spirit-filled life bear the evidence of his power without strain. The branch does not boast of its fruit, because it knows it only carries what the vine has supplied. So it is with you. You do not boast of what the Spirit does through you, because you know it is not you, it is him. And here lies the wonder. People around you begin to encounter God through your life. They may not understand theology, they may not grasp doctrine, but they cannot deny what they see and feel. They sense peace in your presence. They feel conviction when you speak. They are drawn to the light that shines through you. It is not you they are drawn to, it is him. And that is the whole purpose, that the Spirit might glorify Christ through you, making him known to those who may never set foot in a church, but who cannot escape the witness of his power in your life. It is humbling because you realize you are only the vessel, and yet it is glorious because you realize God chose to use you as the vessel. That is the mystery of his Spirit, that he takes ordinary lives, fragile, flawed, imperfect, and fills them with his presence until something extraordinary begins to flow out. It is not the greatness of the vessel that matters. It is the greatness of what the vessel carries. Do not think that this overflow is reserved only for a few special ones. The Spirit was poured out so that all who believe might receive. The promise is for every son and daughter of God. It is not about title or position. It is about surrender. Whoever will yield, whoever will allow the Spirit to lead, will experience his power. It may not look the same in every life, but it will always point to Christ, always glorify him, always draw others closer to him. And this power does not come without cost, for the Spirit will not share his glory with flesh. He will flow through those who are willing to be emptied of self. The more you die to your own ambitions, the more room he has to work. The more you let go of your own strength, the more his strength is revealed. This is why Paul could say, "When I am weak, then I am strong," because he understood that his weakness was the very place God's power could shine brightest. What a paradox, that in surrender we find power, that in weakness we find strength, that in losing ourselves we become instruments for the Almighty. But this is the reality of the Spirit's leading. You no longer live for yourself, you live as a vessel of his presence. And the world around you cannot remain untouched, because when the Spirit overflows, he changes everything he touches. Think of it. One surrendered life can alter the course of many others. One word spoken under the Spirit's unction can heal a broken heart. One act of obedience can shift the atmosphere of a home, a workplace, even a city. That is the impact of his overflow. It multiplies. It reaches beyond you, beyond your strength, beyond your imagination. So when the Spirit leads, you are not simply living for survival, not merely existing. You are carrying heaven's power into earth's reality. You are bringing light into darkness, hope into despair, life into death. And this is not because of anything you are, but because of who he is. That is the testimony of a Spirit-led life, not a life that glorifies self, but a life that points to Christ in every word, every action, every breath. And in the end, this is the greatest joy of all, to know that your life is being used as an instrument for his glory, to see him touch others through you, to watch his power flow where your weakness once failed, to know that eternity is being impacted because you allowed the Spirit to lead. That is worth everything. And so I say to you, when the Holy Spirit is allowed to lead, your heart is transformed, your steps are directed, and your life overflows with a power that cannot be explained, only experienced. There is no greater privilege, no higher calling, and no deeper joy than to live fully surrendered to Him.